Hey y'all, it's me again, Jonathan with Race Kiki. This week, I have the opportunity to speak with a dear old friend of mine by the name of Dan Ruge. He's fantastic. We are going to catch up and Kiki and see what he feels about race. He's a beautiful white boy from somewhere white. I don't know. I can't remember. She drinks. But I introduce you to Dan Ruge. Well, hi, Dan Ruge. Welcome to Race Kiki with Jonathan Lee.
Hi. I just got shy all of a sudden. As soon as the recording thing came, I'm like, ooh.
You're like, oh my God, who's watching? Who's listening?
Enjoy my lovely background kitchen scenery. That you're gonna
Yes,
get
with
the
your
dog
with
food
your
at the KitchenAid
Miss
mixer.
KitchenAid right there, and
Mhm.
I'm assuming that's some sort of kitchen gadget that white people use.
Oh,
That
this
white
thing.
thing.
Oh no, it's super basic. I get so many injuries now. It's like tape for ice bags, so you can like wrap it to your body, like the saran wrap stuff. Do not give me that look.
America, she's one of those athletic gays. She runs and she
I,
bikes and she's outdoorsy, y'all. She
I'm
is
one of
what they
those.
call a handsome, rugged fella. So if you're watching on YouTube, drink her in. I think she's single. Um,
She is single, but her body's falling apart. Hence the ice packs. She's lived a
exactly.
hard life. She went hard since like day one. Like she goes out, not not well, let's rephrase hard, physically hard life. Like I'm not just gonna play volleyball and hit the ball. I'm gonna dive into the sand 20 times and then wake up with a shoulder injury. And I'm like, Dan, you're 38. Like you need to be more chill. Sorry, my dog. I need to take away the toy.
hmm
Yes.
hmm
Yeah.
Now, I met you when we were in Denver because I meet all the people in Denver apparently. When you were just a little fresh baby, questionable queer
Yeah,
working at the
questionable.
JR Bar and Dance Emporium. And
Was it a dance emporium? I can you hear that squeaking? I might just have to like.
yes, I can hear that
Okay,
squeaking.
sorry. Hold on a second.
Yes,
Helena,
dear.
stop. Drop. She hasn't been playing all day, but the second I get on a video call and she's like, "Oh, it's
hmm
playtime."
hmm hmm
Um, I feel like
hmm
come here. Sorry, I'm gonna put this on mute for a second.
Yes, dear.
Hey, sweetie, in your bed. Oh, good girl. Lay down.
He thinks he's on mute, but it's not.
I'm not on mute. I couldn't
Oh
find the
no,
button. Sorry.
that's all right.
Uh, yeah, Dance Emporium. I feel like JR's would have been a great dance place, but I think all of us would have hated working there had it turned into one. Because
I
there
would
was a
agree.
niceness of people leaving at a certain point to go to the dance bar and like it just
Mhm.
being like more of a chill place. But yeah. Oh, those were the days.
Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Indiana. So
Mm.
like it's a section of Indiana that I didn't realize was called the region. Because it's so close to Chicago that basically everyone else from Indiana is like, oh no, you're from the region. You're not really from Indiana. Because they think we're all like more city folks, but like 40 minutes outside Chicago. But like very much like farmers on both sides of the family. So like close to the city, but like it, definitely not like a suburb. You know what I mean?
hmm hmm
More suburban life. Let's be real.
More suburban. Okay, okay, okay.
Yeah.
Leads me to my first question. When did you
Yeah.
learn about race?
Oh, that is a great question. Um, well, I grew up very, very white.
hmm
I think just by the nature of like Northwest Indiana, I think we had a couple of people of color in middle school. I think that was the first time I was like, and it was a big deal because everyone's like, oh my gosh, there's a black kid in our like in seventh grade, and everyone, it was a big thing. Not in a like negative way, but I think people were generally excited. But it was also the anomaly of having a black person in school. You know what I mean? Um, but I think it just became more and more into like uh, my under. understanding the world, because I think, let me just take a step back. I grew up in a very middle class, white, conservative Christian environment.
So
very, like Mike Pence, Indiana, like that's my family. Like focus on the family, that's my family. That's what I grew up in. And I grew up going to church like 5-6 days a week. So like I definitely was raised in the church and had to kind of figure out the world for myself. As a gay person, you have to, I was questioning myself and not having any representation or ideas. Like I was constantly looking elsewhere to kind of see the other, or like in any shape or form, because I was only seeing one thing in front of me. And I was thinking back, knowing that we were going to talk, and I was like, oh, it's interesting, because I remember my senior year of high school, we had to do for English, we had to do a topic, like a research paper. And I was like, I'm going to do mine on hate crimes. Like no one else is doing anything on hate crimes. Like, and I don't know. I just always had these instances where I think opportunities present themselves for me to learn more about race. I remember going my senior year high school to like the local university, and they had an MLK day. And I just remember like first time being in a space where people were talking about race and discrimination and hate in an open way, in a way that felt like almost taboo, because it was issues that people did not talk about. And I think in some spaces up there still don't talk about it. That's a very long answer to say. I think, really wasn't, then I went to college, and of course I had tons of, friends from all over like the spectrum, but yeah.
Where did you go to college?
So also in Indiana, I went to Wabash College. It's like a small, all male liberal arts college. And I know you're gonna say all male. It was not.
No, she was deeply in the church back then.
Oh, deeply in the church, but also at the time, I heard it's changed a lot. I think it was one of the more homophobic environments I've ever been in. I think mostly because I think everyone was worried about being called gay for going to an all-male school, but it was super jockey. Like 85% of the school was, or 85 to 90% was in fraternities. And then like 60 or 70% were on athletic teams. So it was a very like, it kind of regional jock frat school, like work hard, party hard kind of school. So it was very much, my family's going to listen to this. I didn't like kiss my first boy until the night I graduated college. Like the night before, like I went out with friends and kissed a boy in a bar. And it was like, I just didn't have any visibility on anything back then. Like we all had Will and Grace, but did we really have any visibility back then? Like there was nothing. We had nothing. No. I had nothing.
That's really interesting, because I knew all of that about you, but you never told me that, because everything that you're describing is that person I remember meeting, throwing her back out to that Sierra song whose name I cannot, it's just, I've been trying to think about it for the last, since we set this up. I was like, what is that where you would just try to twerk your little back out to? What was it?
Sierra, it wasn't, what song was that?
Because all I'm hearing in my head is Level Up.
Hypnotic, funky, fresh, body, so melodic. Yeah, 1 2 step. There we go.
1 2 step. That's
yeah.
And what do you know about race now?
Oh God. I think I know nothing and some stuff at the same time. I think like it's impossible to understand everything about race, especially coming from a place of privilege and coming from a place where I need to relearn so much just because of the way I was raised and what I was taught. I think I have been blessed with opportunities where I had the opportunity for people to, I'm so sorry, hold on a second.
He's muted. have to. It's okay. Don't worry about it.
I should have hit all the squeaky toys before we started this call. Um, I think I had the privilege of being able to have a lot of people of color and a lot of really good allies and folks educate me the last 10, 15, 20, 25 years. And so I was able to, and also with some of my work experiences, like I was confronted very early on with like white saviorism in the church. I was confronted with systemic health disparities that affect different communities when I was working in public health. So, I got these opportunities to kind of learn about these structural issues and to learn about my own privilege and also learn how to respond to, being told that I have privilege, because that's also an experience that, I think we see very visibly today. When people get told they have privilege, they have a very visceral response, and it's,
yes,
you have to learn what that means and what it doesn't mean. And, I'm not answering your question because I feel like
that's actually because it's a very, very broad question, and I did that for a reason. Talk to me about this white savior thing.
Oh God. I growing up in the church, and in an evangelical Christian environment in particular, there's a strong emphasis on missionary work and missions trips. And I think there was definitely an expectation growing up, whether implicit or explicit, I don't know if you said that right, that as Christians, I'm an atheist now. Oops. But as a religious person, that you would live an active service. And so, I remember in high school going on missions trips. I remember going to South Dakota and going to, help out indigenous communities and what that experience was like. And I think I also watched my parents and others go on these trips and the way that they talked about it. And then I joined the Peace Corps, where, I think there's really great memes that describe, I think, what we see as white saviorism in the development world. But I think I'm struggling because there's so many things I want to say about this. I found myself watching people doing it for all the wrong reasons. I found myself watching organizations that like clearly weren't best suited. The clear what I understand to be now in some ways is like another form of colonialism, which I didn't understand at the same time at the time. Watching that happen, I still am amazed. like white people who go to Africa and think it's appropriate to pick up like a young Black child and like pose for pictures with like holding their hands as their image of them saving Africa. And it's really hard, and like calling out that stuff and not having people not understand that like, Black babies are not a prop for your photo. Like this is not like
Brittany. Put the Black babies.
they really aren't.
I've had a complicated relationship with religion my entire life. Always have. I understand the need for, in my people's past, I understand the need for church and the community, and it was our safe space. It was as far away from you as we could get.
Right.
Kind of a situation.
Right.
And that same breath, we're telling ourselves that through suffering we will gain glory elsewhere, and I appreciate the sentiment, but in the God I choose to appreciate in my world, no. Just no. And on top of all of that, I have a problem that religion has been the excuse for and the cause of every war It's been the cause of and the excuse for slavery. It's been the cause for and the excuse for just everything.
Yeah.
And on top of all of that, we have the religious leaders who are, absolved from paying taxes, living lavish lifestyles, flying all over the universe in jets, preaching indoctrination into this prison of not thinking for yourself.
Yeah. Well, and not just that, but also tying aid to religious belief. So,
yes.
like, we will give you money, but we need you to believe in this.
We need you to believe in this. Yeah. And we need you to abandon whatever it is you've believed for centuries, because how dare you? That isn't civilized.
Yeah. And I also find that, I'm going to get in so much trouble for this. I find that a lot of religious-based international organizations, and this is, people can research this if they don't believe me, they're often accused of not being diligent with the funds that they are giving and how they're used them in these spaces. So even if they are well-intentioned, they might not do proper vetting, or they're,
oh no, I believe all of that.
Yeah, like they're doing all that stuff. I don't know, but on this point that you just raised, like, did you find growing up that, like, was there an emphasis likewise? So there's the, like, we're going to go to these faraway places and do service. Was that same emphasis put on service within the community? Did you see that?
Yeah. Well, in Black communities, yes.
Yes.
Because we rarely have the opportunity or the means to go internationally spreading our white savior. We generally don't have that because, red line neighborhoods and segregation and, infrastructure and blah, blah, I could go on. But that's all by design. And the reason why you grew up all in white experience is also by design.
100%.
Because as I'm realizing, as I'm unpacking more of the disgusting history of this country, our parents are a generation, they were born within the generation living in Jim Crow.
Mm-hmm.
And so they raised us with that as their background.
Mm-hmm.
So when all of these wacky things are going on, everybody needed their moment to feel safe, to put their blinders on.
Yeah.
And what happened with white folks is you had the ability, thanks to the United States government, to insulate yourself in whiteness. And any idea of Black, any idea of other than you was only allowed at your request.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I also find or feel that, like, this part about your parents' generation growing up, the end of Jim Crow, I also feel like on the other side, in like white families, like Jim Crow ended, so everything was fixed, and that was the perception. Like I think the lived experience of so many people were like, oh, well, these laws are no longer there, so then these issues must no longer be present. And I find this mentality, because there's no explicit, very visible law on the books. There are laws that are systematically. Let me rephrase this. Like I think it's challenging.
What's the most interesting part about all of that is nothing between the laws in 1965 and the laws in 1966 or what have you affected your family at all. Didn't matter.
Right. So when people talk about race,
nothing. Like, what's really interesting about that? Because I've been doing chats with folks, online, on this podcast recreationally, and I ask a lot of people, when did you learn about race? And every single white person, yourself included, has never included themselves as a race.
Yeah.
Because when I asked you, when did you learn about race, you had to think about an interaction you had with someone that looked like me.
Yeah. it's so fascinating that you say that. I think it's, yeah, because I think I think as white people we are raised that like we are like representation, visibility, it is us, like it is us, it looks like us, that's what we're exposed to, and everyone else is always the other or the exception to the rule, especially where I grew up. So like, yeah, that is super, I've never thought about that before. I like that. I'm literally like, I'm gonna think a lot on that later. Also, like my psych major is in coming out inside of me of like I have a really smart friend who studied kind of like the intersectionality of identity and like what we use to like identify ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And she did an in-depth look at like Moroccan, Arab, Jewish people post World War II, and like and what characteristics, how do they define themselves? Do they define themselves as African? Do they define themselves as Moroccan, Jewish, Arab, yada yada yada? And it's interesting because like they clearly, that's an identity that they've been going through and navigating and negotiating their whole life. Me as a white person, like I did not do that, and not in the near same extent as we have just discussed. Until I acknowledged that there was the other in middle school.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so what happens is your normal is homogenized. Your normal looks exactly like you. You turn on the television and everything looks exactly like you. The only time you see someone like me is when we're either entertaining you or being absconding from the law or doing something dirty with the cops.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what that does is put a little wrinkle in your brain that associates Black folks with criminality, and that's by design.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
I mean, I grew up 10 miles from Gary too. So like I also distinctly remember like every conversation that was made about Gary, Indiana, like growing up. I remember like when my two best friends from college came home and they were both Black men from like the South, and like a call that my dad had to make to my grandpa to like warn him, like, watch your tongue, because like you can't say, like, he like, I don't think I ever heard my grandpa say the N-word in front of me as a child or as an adult, but like it was definitely something they said in the 70s and 60s, and you know, like it's definitely something they said, you know.
Well, it must have been something your grandpa must have actively said if your father had to call him and give him that buffer.
Oh, 100%.
And I hate to sound like a broken record, but again, that's by design. This is something that has always been instituted. It's like Black folks or Asian folks or Latin folks get a little bit, and white folks get a little bothered, because when you're used to privilege, equality feels like oppression.
I'm so glad you just said this, because I listened to that clip from it was like a couple of weeks ago, and I was like, you're only talking about equality. We're not even talking about equity. Because that is a completely different thing. And I like, that's the first thing that like hit me. I was like, we're not even talking about equity. We're talking about equality. And like that in itself pushes white people over the edge. It really does.
Because what's happening is we're apparently decided that America is a zero sum game.
Yeah.
So any gain I get, somehow it's gonna impact you, or I'm taking it away from you.
Right.
And that is it's gonna be the death of us. We see it happening as the death of us right now.
It's on every issue. I sarcastically joke, but not really joke, that like I never thought that I would see like the end of US as the world power, like the world leading power during my lifetime. But like,
girl,
like we on track,
girl.
Like, because yeah, it's and it's so, I think it's like we could spend like 17 hours talking about like how social media and politics and everything and media are pushing into this like kind of bipolarization of America. But also at the same time, it's like, which I'm glad is why we're doing this, is like people just don't talk to each other and people don't assume good intentionality and like the ability to sit down and have a conversation and honestly just like basic fact checking. Like it's
You
like
know,
what
you know what's really interesting is
yeah.
people are afraid to feel vulnerable about not knowing.
Yeah.
And what's even more interesting is I'm not surprised that you don't know a lot of shit about our history and about the world, but that is again by design.
Right.
Like over this last year, I've been doing all this research and I've been learning all this shit that as a almost 50-year-old human, I didn't know a lot of shit that I should have known.
Mm-hmm.
And I sit here and I'm like, wow, I bought into this whole narrative as well. I bought into this narrative that I wasn't working hard enough.
Yeah. I mean, but it's also, I mean, let's be clear, it's not just the education system that's failing white people, it's also failing everybody.
It's
like,
failing
like
absolutely
it's failing
everybody.
Yeah.
Because
really,
what
really
happens is when you have these homogenized experiences in our education system, and the white kids in their suburban segregated school experiences are getting a remarkable education, but it's very biased and it is missing context. The children in the underprivileged locations are getting the bare minimum and usually 2 to 3 grades behind what they actually are. So then you put these two groups and you say, hey, let's go to college. The absolute beautiful, exceptional ones over here in this underprivileged school fight and claw their way in, and then are met with college loans up the wazoo with interest rates that they can barely tread above water.
And from private lenders and not public ones, so the rates are even higher than normal.
Meanwhile, here y'all are skipping and jumping, and I know that some of y'all, not all of you are rich, and I get that.
Yeah.
But you don't have all of that pitted against you.
Right. Well, and also looking at generational wealth too. So the fact that like some folks are able to go to school and have no college debt afterwards, and even if we look back at like our parents, like I mean, education costs are insane right now, but we look at generational wealth and what you come to the table with. I say this because I was just, I don't know if you've seen this, but I was reading an article that like, I'm going to read this. It's hitting all the points. But Citigroup found that over the past 20 years, the racial economic divides, which are here because of policy past and present, cost this country $16 trillion.
Yeah.
And it's just, I'm sure you've seen the video of like the thing where everyone stands in a line. They're like, okay, step forward if you had 2 parents who went to college, step back, blah, 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 blah. And I really struggle with people who say, and I'm sure you've heard this too, well, they just kind of pull themselves up off the bootstraps. I'm like, fuck your bootstraps. Like, you can work your ass off, but if the system is so stacked against you and the systems are consistently having you be 3 or 4 steps behind, it doesn't matter how hard you work if the system is not there to help you succeed.
So
sorry.
No, you're fine.
Yeah.
And those are all of the points that need to be made.
Yeah.
And what's really interesting is the fact that and I'm not asking you to speak for all white folks because I know how exhausting that is. Do you know how many times I've had to speak for all
I'm not even going to speak for my family.
Girl, you're not even going to speak for myself.
I'm speaking for my dog and myself.
That's it. This whole family, that's it.
Yeah.
Now, when you were in the Peace Corps, the toughest
Mm-hmm.
job you'll ever love.
I love that
I
you know
think
the
I
slogan.
think I met you right after that.
Yeah, I had moved to Denver, I think like 6 months after I finished Peace Corps. Yeah.
Where did you go?
I went to Mali in West Africa.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, I was in a very small village. Small village, it was like 5,000 people, but it was about 11 hours from the capital. But like, your very typical kind of small African village. Like, lived in a 2-room mud hut,
Mhm, mhm,
pulled water from the well. This is back
mhm.
in the day where like ain't no cell phones, no running water, no
Right,
electricity.
right, right.
Yeah,
And y'all were there just preaching the word of God.
came with my Bibles. No. For those on the podcast, you just missed the most epic eye roll ever. No, I was a health education volunteer, but really, I think when you're in the Peace Corps, they say you're there to do three things. Like one, you're there to, like, whatever kind of volunteer you are, you're kind of there to bring your skill set,
Mhm, mhm, mhm.
and try and help in a way that is productive. I'll say that. They don't get that explicit, but I'll say that. And then the second thing is like you're supposed to learn about their culture. Wherever you're at, you are supposed to learn about that country and you're supposed to share that back when you go home. And then the third thing is you're also supposed to share about American values and American culture. So it's really about, if we think about getting to know people from all across the world, it's one tool of American diplomacy. Like, so you're going to send Americans to these places to help them spread American values and democracy and freedom and all this stuff. And yes,
I'm
I
sorry. I'm
yeah,
look, I on the one hand,
yeah.
I say, why do we feel like we have the authority to go into people's villages and insert ourselves into that particular culture?
Yeah. It
On
is
the
a yeah.
same hand, I say, why do we try to share American values and cultures abroad when they're barely working here?
Ooh. I will take the first part first, because the second one I could really go is, I with my work, I feel like I could just share a lot more. I think I think when we take a step back and look at like America as like we call, like, America calls itself the leader of the free world, and Americans are so elitist, and we think very highly of ourselves. We all do, no matter what part of the spectrum you are, that we believe that we are the leading democracy, and we think that spreading democracy and governance and equality around the world is a good thing. And then inherently in us doing that, it also benefits us in the long way on a very high level scale. On a low level scale, like, I know some shitty volunteers. I know some shitty volunteers who like went there, were just kind of a drain, did not accomplish much. And I felt like, and I hope that I was one of the better volunteers that like earnestly went in to try and learn about where I was living, learn about the people, learn about their experiences, learn from them. Like, I was a 22 at the time. I was a health volunteer. Like, I had some health experience, like, but by no means was I a subject matter expert. And by no way, I also went in like, I'm not going to tell you how to do things. Like, I was like, y'all have ideas and stuff you guys want to work on. Like, I'll do what I can to try and help. But I was very much not trying to come in with like the I know best mentality. But I saw people do that. Like, I saw people do that.
That's what I usually see.
Yeah.
Because usually, not to step on top of that, but usually
You're good.
when white folks do their community service in Black neighborhoods, and they'll come and say, well, I know best, and then they'll take over, and then at the end of the day, you've created something that shouldn't have been here in the first place.
Right. And that's not sustainable, and that like does not it empower local solutions to local issues with local people from the community. Like, this is not just a Peace Corps thing. Like, before we recorded, I was saying, like, this week I was on a call with other folks from like my work, and it was all about decolonizing aid. And, how do we take
Mhm.
this mentality? Because like colonialism is still present. It's
Yeah.
present in the structures that are still
Mhm.
operating. It is present in the countries that we interact with. Like the
Mhm.
relationships that we have with different countries. Like it's very based on colonial relationships and what have you. And I think that's an issue that I think is still incredibly prevalent. Thankfully, I think I've been able to work in an office. I work for the government, so I can't really go into like I don't
No,
do
no, no,
anything
no.
sketchy, but like I can't really say. But I am blessed to have found a office that prioritizes very hyper local solutions to issues. And so when we go in, we are meeting with community leaders, we're meeting with youth leaders, we're meeting with women leaders, and we're listening to them, and they're proposing ideas, and we're giving the money directly to these local organizations. Even then, there's still colonial structures on who has been able to form an association, but it's better than I think some of the other ways that aid is done. But it's something
I
that I struggle with, you know.
mhm.
And it's also insulting to like have people come into a community and to, like I've worked with people who will have, we have these. I had an amazing team in my last program that I ran. I had an amazing team of 60 people from the country I was working in, all from these communities, telling me what was going on, proposing solutions, telling me like what the best idea was. And I've seen similar people in that same situation be like, "No, I know best."
Mhm.
And it's like, no, you don't.
No,
Like,
you
you
don't,
need to
girl. You don't
listen to
go here.
the. You don't even go
You don't
here.
even go here.
They're saying on Wednesdays we wear pink, and you keep saying purple, and like, no, we wear pink.
No, we wear pink. We don't. You don't even go here.
Yeah,
So shut up and just give me money. That's
yeah,
all. These are the things that need to work. This is how much money I need. I give me money.
yeah. And then not recognizing the power dynamics that come with it, coming in being the funder and the one with the money and the one with already the access privilege,
Hmm.
whatever status that
Hmm.
you
Hmm.
have. And I think thankfully, at least in some pockets, definitely in my office, there is a strong push to be talking about diversity and inclusion, a strong push to be talking about decolonizing aid, a really strong push to be tackling these issues head on. Is it indicative of the wider development world? Not yet. Do I hope we get there? Absolutely, and I'll definitely push for there. But I don't know.
Are
I
you
mean,
hopeful?
you caught me on a bad day because I kind of had a shit day. So I'm gonna say, I'm hopeful to an extent because I think that there's enough folks passionate about this, and I think the right folks in positions of power, even if it's lip service or are paying lip service, which is a starting point.
Hmm.
And I think enough folks are angry and pissed off, and knowledge is increasing in many pockets that I think it could push for change. But this is not like an overfix. I mean, these systems have been present for centuries. Like
Yeah, they
it can be
have.
fixed
And
overnight.
listen, it is my personal belief, and I know this isn't the right
Yeah.
solution, but it is my personal belief that we need to burn it all down and start over.
Mm,
Because that's just what I believe,
yeah.
because everything is so tainted,
Yeah.
and every law that we pass in this country um, always has something written in it that ultimately is at the detriment of someone else.
Yeah. Do you I find myself thinking about this question a lot of like the spectrum of people who believe things, of like your hardliners to your middle ground, and the burn it all down to the ground thing. How do you think that works with the folks who, like, there's clearly folks who are never going to believe in any of these things. They are 100% racist. They will own their
Mhm.
racism
Mhm.
whether they know it or not. And then there's people in the middle, and how do you approach working with that spectrum? Or how do
Uh,
you think you should? Yeah,
Strangely enough, I think that the way most of us learn is through conversation.
yeah.
And what's really interesting is when I'm talking to folks and I say, what does your, because I'll ask you, what does your circle of influence look like?
Hmm.
And if most of your circle of influence looks exactly like you, all of your decisions will only benefit those like you.
Yeah,
If your
yeah,
circle of influence is broad and diverse, your perspective is broad and diverse.
100%. How do you feel about this cherry picking of people who believe what you believe, but from a different race?
What do you mean by that?
Like, I see this all the time. What is her name? Candace Owens.
Ugh, yeah.
Like anytime
Ugh.
there's an issue on race and she says something, I'll see like white people that I know will be like, see this one black person, they agree with me. I was like, I can't do it. I literally can't. Like, but it comes to that point that you just made though, of like circle of influence. And I look at
Yeah.
these people who are posting this stuff and I was like, do you even know anyone, like any person of color?
No. The
Any,
answer
like
to that
any.
is no.
It's always no.
And I'm
Or
going
my
to tell
favorite is
you,
like, well, I know this one guy from work, and you're like, okay,
no,
what's
you
his?
don't. You don't
No,
know
you don't.
him. Call
You
him.
don't kiki with him.
Don't kiki with him. When's the last time y'all kicked it? You
Yeah,
haven't. Have you been
yeah,
over to his house? Have you had his ribs? No, you don't. You don't know him.
yeah.
Um, Now, before we go any further, no. I want to talk about serious shit before I go into gay foolishness.
Oh
Um,
God, we gotta get to gay foolishness because I have way more feelings on that.
oh wait, let's see how long we've been talking about grown lady shit. Okay, we can shift.
No, no, let's do it. I got a couple more grown lady shit first things first to talk about with you.
Oh, well, go at tell what's your next grown lady question?
I'm super intrigued to know from you because I feel like we were talking earlier about like my experience of going to different communities to do mission work. Did you ever have someone come to you as like doing missions work to you, like growing up in your community, and like what was that
No,
like?
what's really interesting about my childhood as I remember it
Yeah.
is when we left Mississippi, we moved mostly to white neighborhoods.
Oh.
And when we moved to white neighborhoods, and as I've said before, I've spoken exactly this way since I was 12 years old. And I think I spoke this way because moving from Mississippi, going to Washington, on
Yeah.
top of being the deeply chocolatey beauty you see before you,
This
back when I
stunning
was
chocolate beauty.
the stunning beauty you see
Yeah.
before you, but back when I was a little glamazon, I couldn't be baby glamazon and have a southern accent. That was
Yeah.
too many things for me. I'm guessing. So I adjusted this to deflect away from all of the hate.
Yeah.
Granted, there was still hate. There was still hate. There was
Oh,
still
100%.
foolishness. But I never had, I don't remember an experience. There is my my origin story that I tell all the time about when did you learn about race, and it's a
Yeah.
cute little tale. When I was 8 years old, I went to uh, third grade at Broomfield Elementary School
Yeah.
in Natchez, Mississippi. And it was an all black school. We had a little white teacher. She was probably 22, 23 years old.
Yeah.
And she took the class to a plantation for a school trip. And we're driving up to the plantation and all the little black kids are there and we're all dressed up because when you go out on a school trip, you have to look
Big
cute.
deal. It's a big
You have to
deal.
look cute. Your
Yeah.
mama presses your clothes and you
Yeah.
get your little wig moved around. You look
Yeah.
cute. Anyway, so we get to the plantation and we're met by a white woman in a hoop skirt and a fan and fiddle dee dee, the whole thing.
Yeah.
And she says, "Well, welcome, y'all." And but we, us little black kids, weren't allowed inside the house.
Yeah.
There were people inside the house. There were people still touring, but us little black kids weren't allowed inside the house. So we walk around the house, through the fields, and we come up to the slave quarters. And there were black folks dressed as slaves. And our white teacher looked at a classroom full of black kids and say, see, your people were here and they were happy.
Your teacher said that?
Yeah, that's when I learned about race.
That is so incredibly fucked up. It is so incredibly fucked up. Like on so many levels. Like I can't even. Also, like the messages that send to like a young developing brain about their place in the world and what's exciting. And like you talked earlier about like the miseducation, well, not the miseducation of Lauryn Hill, but the miseducation of youth. And like we're gonna feed this lie that black people were happy under slavery. Like,
so when we moved to Washington, and we were living in Tacoma, Washington, I went to this school and there was just a sea of little cute white kids.
Yeah.
And here I am showing up. I'm all like, hi. They're like, oh, where are you from? I'm from Mississippi. M-I crookalator I, humpback I. That's how they would spell Mississippi to me. And it was the touching of the hair. It was the saying if my color would rub off. It was all of that.
Yeah.
And I smiled and nodded.
Yeah.
And by the time you and I met, I had been probably 600 people's one black friend.
Yeah.
And I've been able to navigate the conversations and the jokes and the affectations. I've navigated that all with most of the time a really, really vicious comeback.
Yeah.
Or something to deflect the laugh, or depending on who it was, if it's somebody who's giving me money, I just smile and nod and say, oh, I've never heard that one before. You're clever.
Is this like we haven't talked about intersectionality, but I'm always constantly evaluating my own internalized homophobia growing up gay, and like still to this day, like the things that I carry with me, but like growing up gay and black, like there's in the situation you described, like when did you become aware of, like, I mean, you talked about a little bit like already modifying your behavior because of to minimize otherness.
Oh shit, always. But after I watched the foolishness of last year, well, strangely enough, when you and I right around the time you had come to Denver, you were all young, cute, fabulous, good for you, woo woo woo. I had just broken up with I just gotten out of this really complicated relationship with a racist. And I was navigating my way through that by using evil to keep myself safe. She used evil to keep herself safe. It kept everyone at arm's distance away from me.
Protecting yourself.
Yeah, I was protecting the vulnerable human that was inside of me. And I didn't need anybody to see that until she was ready for her to be seen.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was a really, really interesting journey. I forgot what you asked me.
I think just like you're like when you started to recognize, like when you started to adapt different behaviors to like kind of minimize being outed as the other, whether it's
that was
black or gay or
that was most of my Colorado experience, was adapting my behavior to negate the venom of otherness from the gay white men I was surrounding myself with.
Yeah.
Because there were, for some reason, I could not for the life of me find gay black people outside of Venus and a couple of others.
Yeah. I mean,
up until much later when, I ran into Felony and some other beautiful, beautiful black humans I know from Denver that are also queer. But when I found Venus, I was like, oh my God, girl, I'm holding on you for the rest of my life because you're my little black gay sister, and come on, son, look at
Let's
that.
oh get it. You're glowing right now. So see,
Yes,
that's what happens when you talk about Venus. That glow
I
that she
I
has just
know.
presses onto you.
You should hear the Kiki that she and I did together.
Oh my gosh,
And but what's really interesting is around that time, it was back when all of you when you white queers were actively doing Black lady voice
Yeah, it's
and
still a
putting
thing.
on Black lady affectations and using ghetto jokes and all of those things that we found funny at that time, not understanding the trauma surrounding each and every one of those.
Oh, 100%.
And I will tell you that some of those things, they hurt like shit, but
Yeah.
I laughed my way through them because I'm like, oh well, these are my friends. They don't mean it, but do they?
Mm. Well, girl, I'm sorry for anything that I said that like hits you in any type of way. Not my intention. It's definitely one of those things that have learned more so, and not just about I think race, but the what I think all of the joking and all of the comments that people make and what's been passed off in culture as being acceptable is something that I've really challenged myself with in the last 10 years for sure.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, and people call it PC culture, but I think it's actually really appropriate and really needed because, like you said, we don't realize the pain that those words cause or those jokes cause, you know?
Because and most of the people who are calling PC police or policing my culture, policing blah blah
Yeah.
blah, what they're doing is being held accountable. I'm not policing you. I'm just holding
Yeah.
you accountable for what you're saying and the effects. Well, it was just a joke. It was only funny to you
Yeah. Yeah.
because
100%.
all you're looking at it is through your one perspective.
Yeah.
Much like when we pass laws and we look at it through a white man's perspective on a woman's vagina. But I got into that rant earlier.
A
So,
white man's perspective on everything. Let's be real. A white cisgendered straight male's perspective on everything. Yes.
and well, so now let's talk about your white queer people. That's the way I transition into that.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because the first thing when you started talking about, when you met me, and I haven't lived in Denver in years, but I will say like it's about most gay scenes or bars that I've been to or clubs that I've been to, they are not, unless you're in like Atlanta or bigger cities that like openly have spaces, they're not friendly to people of color.
No, they're not.
They're
Very,
just
very,
not.
very white. Yes.
Yeah, they're extremely white. They're extremely gay male oriented.
Mm-hmm.
And
Every
there's
city I've ever been to, it's
yeah,
always been that way.
yeah. And the segregation, I think, even within the LGBT community of like, lesbians have their bars, gays have their bars, but it still tends to be very white in those spaces too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And where, I mean, so you said, Venus was your lifeline in Denver, but like, where have you been able to find spaces in New York that are like, boom, like this is clearly a queer place for people of color?
New York is probably more segregated in their queer culture than Denver.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Why do you think that is?
It's by design. What
Yeah,
happens is, and I'm going to drag rich white gays for a second.
go for it.
Um, Rich white gays have a tendency of only wanting to surround themselves with other rich white gays and or the people attracted to rich white gays, i.e., other young
Yeah,
pubescent gays. And most of and what happens is you guys come to the city and you're like, I want to live the New York fantasy, right? And you get here and and you have a friend from college that you met,
Of course,
girlfriend,
you sleep on the couch and
and you
you get
sleep
your
on the
nails
couch,
done.
and
Yeah, yeah,
she's white, you're white, everybody's white, and then you get
yeah.
a job wherever you're going, and you have your friends, and you have your one gay friend, and you go out to the bars, and everybody in the bar is white. So then you start dating, and of course the guy you're
I
dating
noticed.
is white,
Yeah.
so your friend circle is white, and the only time a person of color is there is if somebody white is sleeping with them.
Mm, yeah.
And
I
that
think,
person, that person of color, has a proximity to whiteness because all of his their social circle, because of their proximity to whiteness, tends to
mm,
be mostly white.
and that's not even getting into like the fetishizing.
That's not, I'm not even there yet. That was everybody I slept with in Denver. They're all like, oh my God, I can't. Is it as
Yeah,
big? Oh my, is it as big as I say? I've never been with a black guy before. And I'm all like, well, you're not going to do it right now.
yeah. I just, I like in some ways I was hopeful that like it might have been better in New York because I always associate bigger urban
No, it's,
areas with more things, but like
mm.
it sounds like it's even just more segregated.
It is
Yeah.
incredibly, New York is very segregated.
Uh,
The queer culture is very segregated. The drag is very segregated. The it's all very segregated.
how do you feel
I
about? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, go on, go on.
How do you feel about Pose as a show, and then how that's been reacted to within the LGBTQ community, and like watching all of that happen?
First of all,
Yeah.
loved it. Watched
Yes.
every episode.
Yeah.
Cried along with everybody.
100%.
I understood it because it made me feel like if I were that black queer going through that in New York, because I was supposed to move to New York in 96, 97,
Yeah.
somewhere in there, but it didn't happen until 2012. And I felt like that would have been the experience that would have I would have gotten caught up in. Probably not the house ball
Yeah.
community because, well, maybe. I don't know. I don't know. But I loved it. And the I found the complication with Ryan Murphy and not paying them what they were worth, and that I wasn't very surprised by that,
Yeah.
honestly, because it's like I'm getting Ryan Murphy's getting all these accolades and getting all of these awards, and I'm producing these things, and I'm taking all of the shine while these beautiful queer humans
Incredibly talented human beings. Yeah.
are doing all the work.
Yeah.
And I'm giving them their, sure, you can go on this magazine, you can go do these interviews, we can do blah, 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 but I'm not following up with the coins.
Yeah.
I'm not following it up with the coins.
Yeah. Or the
You can keep
nominations for
them,
awards.
fuck all that. You can keep them accolades, you can keep them,
Yeah.
you can keep those nominations for awards. I want coins.
Yeah. Yeah.
And because that's the one thing that and it's been a running theme with our folks. We produce all of this beautiful, beautiful, incredible work, and we give everybody all of this shine and all of this glory, but yet you're not paying us. You're not
Yeah.
showing us our worth.
Just constantly appropriating the culture too.
You're
And profiting off of
constantly
it.
appropriating the culture. I don't even
Yeah.
want to start with Drag Race, but
I
I'm
was gonna
just
go there, but yeah.
mhm,
But we
mhm.
don't need to.
No, we can dip your toe, but the only time I talk about Drag Race is when I have drag queens talking, because I feel
Yeah.
like you and I are recreational queens and we do not twirl and dip, so we have no place to talk.
Oof, you're
That's
right.
just like straight men talking about sports. We
Yeah.
have no place to talk. We can sit there and watch, but until we do heels and do backflips, we can't critique anything that the girls are doing. I just have questions to ask about other girls in the heels.
my I think my big thing that I get frustrated with Pose, I love the show. Oh my God. I haven't because she's behind on her TV watching.
Mhm,
I haven't
mhm.
seen the last season yet.
Oh,
I know.
be
Don't even tell
prepared.
me. I've been blocking any article that comes up about it just because I don't want any spoilers. Um, my big struggle is like all of the white gay folks and even white allies that come out and talk about how much they love Pose because they can enjoy black gays in a space, but like don't come into our bar or like don't come into our club, but like we're gonna mimic and applaud what we see on this TV show, but we're not actually gonna support it. We're not gonna engage in a meaningful way, you know?
I've not experienced that. I've experienced the white gays who watch Pose and approach me, who never actually met me before, and speak in the vernacular of Pose when
Uh,
that's not how they speak with my boyfriend.
yeah, yeah,
So what drives me crazy is when white gays speak to me in what they think is a black scent.
I am trying to think. I can't even do the I can't do that. Oh,
Yeah, all of
yeah,
that.
there
Yeah,
we go.
all
All
of
of
that.
that. Yeah.
Yes, girl. Hey,
Queen,
girl.
play.
Yes,
Yes,
yes.
yes,
And
Hunty.
but
Yeah,
then when you're talking to my boyfriend, who's a beautiful
yeah,
white man, that is
yeah,
not how you're talking. When you're talking
yeah.
with my business partner, who's a white man, that's not how you're talking.
Right, right. Yeah, I think that's also like I don't think that's just indicative because of Pose. I think just like white people are really bad at doing that, period.
It's you trying to relate
Yeah,
by not when you could just say hi,
yeah,
hello, how are
yeah.
you?
And overcompensate for I think uncomfortableness that people feel.
Which is so interesting that y'all hate to be uncomfortable.
Oh my God.
Y'all really, really, really
Really
hate to be
do.
uncomfortable.
We really do. I mean, but that just shows you how comfortable our lives have been that like the minorest inconvenience like really pushes us through. Like we
Yeah,
just
that's
can't
why
even.
that's why opioids took off so well.
Well, and that's why you have all these viral Karen TikToks because like they get told no once and they think that like someone just like shot their family in front of them. You know, they don't know how to respond.
What do you mean no? And then her head explodes and you're like, girl. But
Girl.
then you have everybody pacifying this foolishness.
Yeah, yeah.
And
I
then we were Scott and I were walking down the street the other day. We were in Chelsea for some reason, and there was this white man in the middle of the street on 8th Avenue, 22nd,
yeah,
screaming at the top of his lungs while banging on a cab, just banging, banging, banging on this cab, screaming at the top of his lungs. White guy. The cabbie is Indian. Scott and I are walking. These cops leisurely stroll
uh,
up the street, leisurely stroll up the
yeah,
street. They
yeah.
pass Scott and I. They leisurely walk over to this man. Hey, buddy, you want to take a walk with us, buddy? Come on. So they walk, they
Gently lead him by
coax,
the small of his back.
they
Give him some
coax this
water to
man
like, you know.
off the street, take him around the corner, and just stand and talk to him in the most calm, rational tone. Their hands weren't on their guns. They were like standing there like this, just like,
Yeah.
yeah, friend, we understand. Blah, 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 blah. And I'm thinking, and Scott looks at me and he says, what do you think would happen if that man was black?
Oh,
I was like,
it'd be
you know,
tackled with a gun drawn
yeah,
at a minimum.
sure. And then he says, what about if you were Latin? I was like, same. So like, what about Asian? I was like, same.
Yeah. Yeah.
But in the
Although with the
same,
Asian folks, they would probably scream louder in English because they would assume that they don't speak English.
Mhm. But here's the thing about the way that the cops handled that situation. Do I think that they handled that situation correctly? I do actually.
Yeah, 100%.
Except for the leisurely walking over to the car. Do I think that that kind of grace should be offered to everybody universally? Yes, I do.
Yes. Yeah.
Is that kind of grace represented universally? No, it is not.
Yeah. Yeah. I think this is something I struggle with a lot is this inability to look objectively at how any entity is operating. So police, I mean, like no for like Target is not in their corporate offices being like, we're not going to look at how our corporation is working to try and improve. Like you will go out of business as a for-profit company if you do not look internally to improve your systems, to improve how you offer services to the community. Mm-hmm. And this resistance to looking at how the police system works and how to improve without being accused of being anti-police or, you know, not loving your country, it baffles me. Like,
it's a jump, isn't it?
It's just
a jump.
Well, when did progress become a bad thing?
No, you know why? I'm going to tell you why. When we did that war on drugs 50 years ago, at the same time pumping drugs into Black and brown communities.
Yeah.
And then when Clinton signed in, nope, it wasn't Clinton. I think it was Reagan. Somebody started to, nope, it was Clinton.
It was Clinton, 3 strikes.
Yes, yeah. he militarized the police.
Yeah.
And so when the 3 strikes, there is a financial compensation to police forces who do drug busts. So drug enforcement task force and SWAT teams and all of these things and tanks and armored, all of these things were being influxed into local police offices.
Yeah.
And at the same time, we were having all of this illegal drugs being pumped into these Black and brown neighborhoods. And then we have these Black and brown neighborhoods largely mostly redlined. So there's no investment there. There's no money there. So you have generationally poor people being influxed with a money-making opportunity, no matter the what's the word I'm looking for? Anyway, no matter your idea about drugs, your opinion about drugs, one way or the other, in my opinion, everything should be legal. If everything is legal, you make your own choices. But you have these young humans in the drug world trying to make a living for their family, right? You have young humans trying to make a way for their family. And then you have these militarized police departments, and you have the drugs ultimately being funneled into this neighborhood by the cops.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, not by the cops, by the government.
Yeah. And then we have clear indications of, I wish I knew like the studies names, but I think these findings that like, there's no more crime in Black neighborhoods than white neighborhoods. Like they just police Black neighborhoods more. So the crime rate is higher because that's where they're spending their time. And that's not even also getting the fact on drugs that like, look at the penalty for cocaine versus marijuana or like cocaine versus crack and the amounts of what's felony and not. It's clearly structurally.
Even if we go even as simple as marijuana, look at the amount of white kids who just get slapped on the hand, or the cops will take their weed away and they'll send them on their way, versus 100%. Brothers and sisters of mine rotting in jail while your brothers and sisters are green millionaires.
Yeah. It's really funny that you just said that. I was talking with my brother. God, I wish my family smoked weed. They don't. I think that would calm things down a lot.
Yes, it would. Yeah.
I was talking with my brother and someone that we went to high school with. He is now. My brother was like, yeah, his younger brother. So this is weird. My friend from high school, or guy I knew from high school, his younger brother is now one of these big weed developers in Michigan
Of
with
course he is.
multi-million-dollar investors. And they're
Uh-huh.
like, oh my God, he has this money. And I'm just like, do you guys see how problematic this is? And like the fact that you think this is great and that he's got all this money and income and that it's okay, it's socially okay for him to do it because, we finally changed an outdated, unneeded law in one state. So now he's going to profit legally in the millions of dollars while we have young black and brown kids with a joint that are thrown in jail with no legal representation, pulled out with records. Yeah, it's
And then when they get those records, it complicates their ability to vote.
everything. Yeah, which
And then
that
and then it derails their ability for legal employment.
Yeah. The fact that you cannot vote after serving your prison term is insane. Like your service was completed. Your ability to vote should be restored. I do not understand this.
There are acts that are trying to change that,
Yeah.
but they are tied to paying back court costs. Court costs.
And we
And
know how
if
that
you've
works.
just gotten out of prison, and um, I know that they're not supposed to ask about felonies anymore, but most of, I don't know, it's something about it. It feels like a trap, like they all do.
Yeah. Yeah. I know.
And again, I'm not calling victim. I'm not calling anything like that. All I'm doing is telling you the cards I see the way
Yeah.
I see them.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I voted to because Florida, I'm a Florida voter.
Oh yeah.
It was one of those, I know. Well, my vote counts here.
Uh-huh.
More than it would in Indiana or other places. Florida was
That
one
is
of those
very
states.
true.
Yeah, it's one of those states that the voters passed a law to allow people with prior felonies to be able to vote again, and the
Mm-hmm.
Republican state legislature shut it down.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And there's these structures, and even when you look at parole boards and everything, it is embedded to keep people of color down. Like it is,
Yes.
it just those
Yes.
systems are there, and it's. I think this is where I get. You ask me if I have hope, and I'm like, today I don't. But this is where sometimes we're like, the entire system needs to be blown up in a way because
Yes,
I
it
think like
does.
it's so systematic across so many different levels of society. Small incremental change is not gonna change things, and you're never gonna convince those people on that very polar end who are completely racist. They're never gonna agree with you, so we shouldn't even be
No matter
trying to
what you
entertain
do,
them.
no matter
Exactly,
what
they're
you
never
do.
gonna change their mind. Yeah.
And as I was logging on, I was listening to the news, and because that's my porn as of late.
Hmm.
Um, it's so fucked up.
Yeah.
But TSA has been being beat up by people, right? And they have pulled loaded guns out of people's carry-on luggage. There's been over 3,500 cases of people acting crazy on the plane.
Yeah.
More than 2,500 of those were because people didn't want to wear a mask.
Yeah.
We have elected officials whose salary we all pay, systematically trying to bring us back to Jim Crow.
100%.
We have old white men and dried up white women trying to decide the make laws for women's bodies. We have a political system just dripping with corruption.
Hmm.
We have financial wealth in this country so skewed that we have like a Bruce Wayne and a Tony Stark
Oh,
and
I don't know those references. I know
and
Bruce
a
Wayne, Tony Stark.
you don't know Bruce Wayne and Tony Stark
I know Bruce Wayne. Who's Tony Stark?
from the Avengers, Iron
Child, I don't
Man.
know. I'm sorry.
You need to get into Disney. But anyway, but you have 3 billionaires
Yeah.
fucking around in space
Oh, I can't even with that.
while we have people, I won't even say around the world, we have people in this country who don't know where they're going to sleep at night.
Yeah. Yeah.
In the same country. And then you have Florida, which I'm convinced is going to secede and turn into the Confederacy.
I don't think they'll succeed just because I don't think that they actually have the wherewithal to put the work in to do it.
Okay. Okay.
If that makes sense.
It does. It does.
Yeah.
We were there in September for my partner's sister's wedding. And it was every time I talk about this wedding, I always have to make this disclaimer. The wedding was beautiful. His sister is lovely. I was very
so happy for them. We
included.
Love her.
No, she looked so pretty.
Yeah.
She looked like a boho chic kind of beautiful princess.
Aww.
Yeah, and she has the most beautiful head of hair. Yeah, my partner is from beautiful people. Anyway, the wedding was on Amelia Island. And I was the only Black person on Amelia Island.
Yeah.
Every restaurant we went into. No, I guess it's just me. Every space we entered. No, yeah, I guess it's just me. Now, my birthday was September 20th. She got married on September 19th. My birthday, September 20th. Scott wanted to take me out to brunch. We went to 5 different restaurants before someone would seat us. 5.
What was the reasoning given in the first 4?
One, the first one.
Because I love the bullshit things that people come up with because it's so like we can see right through this excuse.
The first one, it was kind of chilly that day, but I was looking cute. And we walk up, it was in like this old part of Amelia Island. Again, Amelia Island, beautiful. Beautiful. It's pure,
I know nothing about the place, but I'm going to Google it after.
We go to this place and they were like, like hipstery kind of vibe, like we reclaimed this and now we serve kombucha, that kind of place. And we heard good things about their chicken and waffles because Scott loves chicken and waffles. So we're standing out and people are there and there's a line and we're standing there. The young lady comes out and Scott walks up and he's all like, yeah, we need a table for 2. Oh, okay. Oh, okay. And then he comes and stands next to me and she looks and she's all like, oh. And so we're standing. Then we're standing 10 minutes pass by, 15 minutes pass by. Then this other couple walk up, man and a woman.
White.
Oh, obviously. We need a table. Sit them right just like that. And other people walk up, sit them just like that. Other people walk up, sit them just like that. And Scott's all like, this happened like 3 or 4 times. And he's all like, I'm going to go say something. I was like, nope, we're not going to do this today.
Yeah.
We're not going to do this today.
Yeah.
So we went back to the hotel. I changed my drag. because it was chilly, put on some different drag. We go to a different restaurant. And he goes in. He's all like, yeah, can we get a table? All right. So we stand and we wait and we wait. People come in, they get seated. People come in, they get seated. People come in, they get seated. And we're just standing there. Are like, okay. Third place, same thing. Fourth place. And I chose not to say anything.
Yeah.
Because when you're the only one, you say nothing.
Yeah. And also, it's not your responsibility to say something.
It's not my responsibility to say something.
Yeah.
And so we walk in to this fifth place, bougie, big, giant doors. We walk in, and this little girl behind the counter, I'm sorry, at the desk, and she's all like, welcome. We're like, yeah, thank you. Can we get seated? And she looks us up and down. We look lovely, obviously. And then so she sits us down, and something happened. The one gay that was on Amelia Island served us. The one gay.
They had to call her into work just for that moment because she wasn't working before you got there. They're here.
There's some gays here.
They're city gays. They are city gays, and they're fabulous. Yeah.
And so this little potato gay came. I'm sorry, he was delightful. He came over, and we're all like, thank you. We just want some breakfast, whatever you have. Just give us some food, give us some champagne. It's my birthday. Yeah. Woo. And it was cute. Then later that evening, Scott had made a reservation at this golf club for drinks. After dinner, we went and had this beautiful dinner. And as we're at dinner, this white woman kept looking over at me. She kept looking over at me. She kept looking over at me. And then she says, are you Jarrell from Atlanta? And I looked at her and I said, no, we all don't look alike.
Is that a famous person, or is it she just like name a one black person?
Just some random black dude that she knew.
I didn't know if it was like some TV reference or something like that. Not that would make it any better, but it's still just horrible.
And I was like, no, we don't all look alike. And so Scott was all like, he just giggles and I giggle and she's all uncomfortable and stumbling. Well, you have such a beautiful speaking voice. I was like, I know, thank you. And whatever. So then we go to this what I thought was a golf club, what it was rumored to be a golf club. We get there. It was a plantation.
By any other name. Oh, God.
And we walk in and we go to sit in this giant room. And we sit there, the waiter finally comes over and we order our drinks. And there are this loud, like rich old white guy, younger women, even younger boobs, sitting next to it, just loud and boisterous and drinking and hooting and hollering. And they're all like, y'all ain't from here, are you? We're like, no, we live in New York. Oh. And as they're trying to get us involved in their conversation, this other woman walks in and they seat her at a table next to Scott and I. She sits there, she sits down, she looks over, she snaps to the waiter. He comes back over, she says something, she's pointing over at us, and then she moves to a different table. Then she snap, points over at us again, moves to a third table where she couldn't see us.
I can't even.
And then we
also like kicked out of the restaurant. Like, I'm sorry. Like, no. Like, that's when I'm the management to be like, I'm sorry, we serve everybody here. Get the fuck out. We don't need your money.
You know that wasn't going to happen.
Oh, I know it wasn't going to happen.
You know that wasn't going to happen.
A boy can wish.
But it's all of those things that like we navigate and we do it beautifully without. It's not something that I want to do, but it's something that we do anyway.
Yeah.
So don't cry for me, Argentina. I still have a great time.
Yeah.
It's just some of the foolishness I have to navigate through is oftentimes exhausting.
Like just internalizing being the only person of color in a space over and over again. Like that's exhausting. Like
Mm-hmm.
I can't even, yeah.
Well, yes, you can imagine it. You were in Africa.
Yeah, but I came in with my privilege and like
Well,
I
yeah, that is true
and I
because
came in as an American, like I like it was never the same thing, you
you
know?
are
It was
absolutely
never the
correct.
same thing. Yeah.
Because when you walk into anywhere in your whiteness, that's your
It's my pass.
it's your guarantee that you are going to be treated incredibly well.
Right. It was the same pass that was given to white women that were in the same position as me
Mm-hmm.
because even if it was a very patriarchal society, if you were white, you were then it was like a third they were then a third gender. They were the other because their whiteness took them out of the category of what was, you know, socially acceptable for a woman's behavior or, you know, in that
Mm-hmm.
space.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Ugh. I don't I this is where and the amount of like oppression and internalized homophobia that I carry as a gay person is so minimal and not it's like not negligible compared to like what people of color go through every single day of their
Mm-hmm.
lives, especially
Mm-hmm.
in America. And this is why, even with my experience, I don't understand how people can't even open themselves up to understanding that people experience the world in a different way than they do and having any sort of acknowledgement of that. Like it just dumbfound me, like the wall that you hit with people.
It's because when you question, if I think that's the reason why I start this conversation
Yeah.
asking, when did you learn about race? Because I could start asking a different way. When did you learn about racism? And that
Yeah.
would be a different answer. But the
100%.
reason why I ask you, when did you learn about race, is because we have been lulled into this lie that race doesn't matter, yet it is on every form that we have to fill out.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
dictates every single decision that is made on our behalf.
Mm. Yeah.
So if it didn't matter, it wouldn't be on so many things.
Yeah.
If it didn't matter, we wouldn't have strategically segregated ourselves. If it didn't matter, most of our workplaces wouldn't look primarily like you. If
Yeah.
it didn't matter, most of our
Our
universities wouldn't look primarily like you. If it
yeah.
didn't matter, if it didn't matter, our political spectrum wouldn't look like you.
Yeah. I I like want to end on like a hopeful note.
Oh yeah,
I
absolutely.
think I have like a hopeful note of
Tell me.
um and this point that like I always try to reiterate to folks because I do believe and I agree with you that like conversations are like so important to understanding and to moving the thing forward. But I think it's not just conversations. I think people need to have people, like you said, in their social circles who
Mm-hmm.
are different than them.
Mm-hmm. You have to.
And my bestest friend in the whole world married a white dude. He was a total asshole. They got divorced, cheating bastard, good riddance. But then she married a black man and they have a beautiful mixed race baby that's just like the sassiest, loveliest human being ever. But I got to watch her family navigate that situation and navigate things that they were brought up to believe in and
Mm-hmm.
things, systems that they thought to be true and see that challenged and see
Mm-hmm.
that affected in a way because they then had a living, breathing person that they cared about and that cared about them and their lives. And the patience that this man shows them too.
Mm-hmm.
This man is very patient because he has to be. Like you don't, there's no other choice, you know.
Well, what's really interesting is you said your friend has a beautiful mixed race baby, and the world sees your friend's baby as a black child.
Oh, 100%. 100%.
And I was having a conversation with this gentleman on Pride, and he has Two, he has a niece and a nephew who are, and he says, "Oh, they're just beige. They're not black. They're not white. They're beige." I was like, "No, those kids are black.
Yeah.
Period."
Yeah.
But that's not how I see them. I was like, "But that's how the world sees them."
Yeah. And that's how the
But
world will
and that's how
interact
the
with them.
world will interact with them. That's how the
Yeah.
world will perceive them. That's how the world. And if we want them to have the same experience as everyone else, we only have to make it fair. We
Yeah.
just have to make it equal. We're not taking anything back, because I don't even want to begin the conversation. Well, after we get equal, we'll talk about reparations, because I feel like if we do too much too soon, white people will explode.
You can't say the R word. Like that's the word that like people lose their collective shit over.
Shit over.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, they lose their collective shit because they think that we're not owed anything. But then we say, well, my ancestors built this country,
Yeah.
and I know yours did also, but not in the same way.
And your ancestors profited off the generational wealth that was created based on my ancestors' enslavement. So
That
you did profit off of it.
you did. You
You
did.
did.
So shut the fuck up and cut me my check.
Yeah, I'm gonna need my monies.
I'm gonna need my coins. She has to go shopping. Daniel,
Yes.
my dear friend, it was
Yes.
so lovely chatting with you.
Yeah. Apologies for the dog issues earlier. She's now finally sleeping, and
of course she is. Right as we're finishing up, I am honored to have had this conversation with you, and I'm a better person for having had it.
Likewise, and I'm glad that you reached out, or we both reached out. I'm glad it happened, and I also thank you for having these conversations and being public about these conversations, because we need more of this across all levels of society. Like we don't need to be on TV seeing people do it. We need everyone to be engaging in conversations like this.
And more importantly, it didn't hurt anything.
Actually, I'm really hurt, and
You heard?
I feel like I'm gonna do a viral TikTok. First, I gotta download TikTok. Second, I gotta like learn how to use it.
Right.
But then I'm gonna create a video of how hurt I am by this conversation and how I feel attacked and invalidated.
Can you use in the background Christina Aguilera's "Hurt"?
Ooh.
And I would like you to be in like some sort of red number with a long wig with soft Marcel waves.
No, I'm gonna go full appropriation. I'm gonna use like and I'm telling you, or like no, I'm gonna use I'm here. I'm using "I'm Here" from The Color Purple, because that is my favorite Broadway musical song. And
You will not. You will absolutely not. Now, before we go, I have to tell you this song.
Yeah.
No, I'm gonna stop recording because this is for the after 30.
Yeah.
Thanks, Dan. It was amazing.
Yes.
Stay on the call and just stop recording. Y'all, this is gonna be juicy. I'm about to drop some dimes.